Hello guys, this is Scott here, and today we're doing another historic video. It's actually been quite a while since we last done one of these, but in this one I'm going to be having a look at the winter of 2005-2006. Now there's two reasons for doing this one. Firstly, it's a winter I've had a request to do for quite a while, and also it's inspired by the winter we've just had really. We've had quite a very dry and anticyclonic winter, and that's what 2005-2006 was. So just before we get started, I'd just like to say that many of the facts and figures you hear in this video come from the historical archive at Trevor Harley's personal weather website. He has detailed facts and information going right back to the Middle Ages in some cases, and more detailed information going back to the start of the 20th century. And also the charts that you see in this video come from wetterzentral.d. They have an archive of charts going back to January of 1871. So if you'd like to request a historic video, as I always say, you can choose anything from the start of January 1871. So, we're going to start off on the 1st of November 2005 because November 05 was actually quite an interesting month. It has a central England temperature of 6.2, which is ever so slightly colder than average, but it was very much a month of two halves this. The first half of it was actually the warmest since 1994, which of course is the warmest November on record. And it actually follows on from what was continuing at this point to be an exceptionally mild autumn. The autumn of 2005 was a very mild one, and November starts off with this. So we start off on the 1st of November, and really it's a pattern that you'd expect to see really in the late autumn. We've got low pressure coming in off the Atlantic and high pressure around the Azores and through into southern Europe. So really what you'd expect for the late autumn period. And these opening days of November are actually very mild. In fact, as we go through to the 4th, we drag up some very mild weather. In fact, Prestatyn in North Wales actually recorded 18.8 Celsius on the 2nd of November. But there on the 4th, we are bringing low pressure through, so it is quite a wet start as well to the month. Through into the 7th, and again we remain unsettled and quite mild, through into the 9th and into the 11th of November 2005 as well. And this is, again, just a very mild pattern, but this is where it actually starts to change. Because as we go through into the 12th of November, we bring this very deep area of low pressure through to the north, and this actually brings some very strong winds and some very heavy rain as well for a time on the 12th of November. But what it does is it forces that area of high pressure out into the Atlantic, and this completely shakes up the pattern here. So that very mild pattern that we had that dominated the whole of the autumn so far suddenly shifts. And as we go through into the 13th, you can now see that we're under a much cooler northwesterly flow. And as we go into the 14th, that high pressure then builds through the country. But at this point now, we're under a completely different air mass now. We're not under a tropical air mass anymore, we're under a cool polar air mass. So this is actually bringing quite a bit of sunshine and some frost as well during this middle part of the month. In fact, I should also mention that this was a very sunny November as well. In fact, it's the second sunniest November on record, can you believe? And it recorded an England and Wales average of 98 hours, which is exceptionally sunny for this time of the year. And again, you know, into the 15th, we keep that northwesterly flow. And as we go through into the 16th, we actually get another little northerly again. So again, the wind's going all the way up into the Arctic regions. Not really little is the word I'd use, but nonetheless, you know, we're bringing down a cold air mass there, and then some snow showers by this point as well. Through into the 17th and the 18th of November, and we build that area of high pressure back through the country. So you can see now the pressure pattern's completely changed to the first half of November. As I said, the first half was the warmest first half since 1994, but the second half was actually then the coolest since 1993. So a real big switch here. And into the 19th and the 20th of November, and we just keep that area of high pressure around the country. Into the 21st and the 22nd of November, in fact, the high pressure actually tries to go a bit up towards Scandinavia there. So it potentially again just hints of something a little bit more interesting to come. But actually, as we go through into the 23rd, it actually starts to go the other way. And as we go through into the 24th of November 2005, it actually starts to retrogress up towards Greenland. And as always, I have to assume that you're watching these for the first time. Basically, retrogression is the opposite of the zonal flow. So normally, weather systems will exit into the Atlantic off the Canadian seaboard and move eastwards across the Atlantic into Western Europe. Now, retrogression is the opposite of that. So usually areas of high pressure do this, and that's when we see high pressure move in a westward direction. So this area of high pressure started off around the country, and it's now moved out into the mid-Atlantic and up towards Greenland. In fact, you can see a very potent and exceptionally high air pressure over Greenland there, going up to 1,060 millibars. So that really means quite an interesting cold spells coming up in the winter. And as we go through into the 25th of November, we then send that high pressure up to Greenland, and we then dive low pressure down the North Sea. And on the 25th of November, this brings the country its first widespread snowfall of the winter. In fact, most of the country actually had heavy snow with this, mainly down eastern areas, but in fact western areas and actually parts of Cornwall actually had some very snowy weather from this as well. I mean, there was a lot of disruption on this morning. You know, it was really the first big snowfall we'd had, really probably since the winter of 2000-2001. Really, if you're familiar with winters, a lot of the noughties winters were actually exceptionally mild. But at the end of November 2005, we actually get one of the colder spells of the decade, can you believe? So really quite an interesting cold spell there, and you know, it's only November, so you know, it does provide hints that it could be a bit more of an interesting winter. But as we go through, in fact, actually, those are the upper air temperatures there on the 25th of November. And you can see the whole of the country's in cold air, so that shows that it's cold enough for snow pretty much everywhere. And as we go through into the 26th of November, really we just keep the weather very cold, really. And again, we have snow showers moving in on the east coast. You know, it's a very wintry end to what was a very mild autumn up until this point. And on into the 27th, you know, again we keep that northerly, but we're starting to lose the snow risk now, so it's more just back to cold sunshine and hard overnight frosts. And really that's where we end November, really, through the 28th and into the 29th. We just keep generally cool and overnight frosty conditions around the country. And there's the chart for the 30th of November 2005. And that takes us into December 2005. And December 2005 was again another dry month. It has a central England temperature of 4.4 degrees. And again, it was another exceptionally sunny month this. In fact, it's the fourth sunniest December on record, with an average of 65 hours across the UK. So again, you know, two very sunny months in a row here. And really, again, it was another very anticyclonic month, but the month does start off on a bit more of an unsettled note. So as we go through the 1st and into the 2nd of December, this really brings, you know, probably the only major stormy spell of this winter. You see we have a deep area of low pressure there moving into the southwest on the 2nd of December 2005. And really, as I said, was really the only stormy spell of this winter. But that sort of sits around the country through the 3rd and into the 4th of December. And actually what we got in this early part of the winter was quite a lot of big showers were developing. In fact, there was a few winter thunderstorms in this. So, quite an interesting start to the winter here. But really that stays through as we go through the 5th, 6th and into the 7th of December, before again, as we move into the 8th and the 9th, that area of high pressure that started to show its face in the end of November returns. And as we go through the 10th, you can see again it's completely taking hold of our weather. And again, it's trying to get up towards Scandinavia. And really that high pressure just sits around the country really. So through the 11th and into the 12th of December, we just keep, hard overnight frosts, sunny days, and again, fair amounts of mist and fog. So, pretty decent early winter weather here that we're getting. And that carries on really through the 13th and into the 14th of December. That high pressure just pulls out a little bit into the Atlantic, bringing down some slightly cooler air from the northwest. But again, really, there's not much change in the weather through the 15th and into the 16th and the 17th of December. We actually get another attempt at a northerly there, which does bring some further snow showers down the east coast. But again, that high pressure reasserts itself back through the country. So as we go through the 18th and into the 19th and the 20th of December, again we just return to chilly and frosty anticyclonic conditions through the 21st and into Christmas Eve 2005. And again, the Christmas period was just again another, really what this winter's been so far, just generally cold, frosty, with some patches of mist and fog. So into Christmas Day, and we pretty much have high pressure slap bang over the country. Before on Boxing Day, actually, it tries to get up towards Scandinavia again. And that's becoming a bit of a recurrent theme of this winter. Another reason why I chose this winter was because it was a decent winter compared to what we'd had at the time, as I mentioned before, Certainly a cold and a chilly and frosty winter with a couple of snow events isn't too bad. But at the same time, it was also quite a disappointment because the number of times, the weather was trying to get into a favourable pattern. For coal lovers, it was probably, it was really sort of a bit of a, what they often say on the forums, a close but no cigar winter. And again, that's what this winter just gone's been. There's been a lot of blocking around the country, but, not really getting into the right position to deliver us, a proper cold spell. And that was the case in this winter as well. So the phrase close but no cigar, this really applies to this winter, but overall it was still quite a decent one. And in fact, as we go into the list late part of December, so into the 27th, we do actually get another pretty decent spell for the winter. Because as you can see on the 27th there, that high pressure's gone back up to Scandinavia. And as we go into the 28th, we actually get this upper cold pool, which is indicated by those blue colours there, moving into the southeast. And this actually brought some heavy snow to end off 2005 for the southeast. So, again, another bit of an attempt at a cold spell here. And actually, as we go through into the 29th of December 2005, we actually record an overnight low of minus 12.8 Celsius at Aviemore. So again, a pretty decent end to December. It's certainly, there certainly could be worse, but, certainly not bad. And that takes us through to the end of the month. So those are the upper air temperatures there on the 29th. So again, we have cold air coming into the east, the minus 10 Celsius ice of them, which is actually quite cold air at 850 HPA. So again, a pretty decent cold snap. But as we go into the 30th, the Atlantic does try and have a little go. And into New Year's Eve we have a bit more of an unsettled one. And then that takes us into the start of January 2006, and January 2006 has a central England temperature of 4.3 degrees, which is about average, but this one was actually quite a remarkably dry January actually, and the country as a whole recorded 30.5 millimetres of rain, which is just a third of what you'd expect. So, you know, a very anticyclonic month again that's about to develop. But as we start off on New Year's Day, you can see we have that area of low pressure just on top of the country. You know, so the brief spell of unsettled weather from the end of the previous year does just hang on. But very quickly through the 2nd and into the 3rd of January, the high pressure that again's been dominant for much of this winter so far tries to reassert itself once again. And as we go into the 4th, you can see again trying to set up over Scandinavia. You know, another attempt in this winter where high pressures try to get up to Scandinavia. But again, you know, it does develop, and for a time we do get some easterly winds through the 5th and into the 6th. But as we go through into the 7th, that does start to turn back to more of a southeasterly. So again, close but no cigar is the term to describe this that you would use. But of course a southeasterly in winter is still quite cold. It's just bringing in a lot of cloudy and raw weather, to be honest, off the continent. So, you know, not the severe cold, but certainly, you know, at least feeling seasonable, I suppose, for early January. And then that carries on into the 8th and the 9th and the 10th before that ridge sort of starts to flatten out a bit. And then this is really where the only real rainfall of January 2006 came. Because as we go through into the 11th of January, we get quite a deep area of low pressure there moving by to the north of Scotland. And then this day really brought the only wet day of the month. And again, these milder and more unsettled spells last through into the 12th and the 15th of January. So, you know, just a bit of a spell of more unsettled weather through the 15th and into the 18th, before by the 20th, again, the high pressure trying to reassert itself. You know, and again, into the 21st, you can see, if you look over Scandinavia, again, another area of high pressure trying to set up there. I mean, you can actually see there's quite a deep amount of cold plunging into Eastern Europe. I mean, in fact, January 2006 was actually brought a very severe cold wave for parts of Eastern Europe. In fact, temperatures in those parts were down to minus 40 Celsius in some cases. And the only thing that really spoilt it for us is, you can see, in the North Sea we've got a bit of an area of low pressure. And I think if that hadn't been there, it would have allowed us to have actually tapped into some of that cold. And of course we wouldn't have got minus 35, minus 40 Celsius. But, you know, it could have actually brought quite a severe cold spell. But alas, it does just fail. But again, rather than getting wet and windy weather, we just get more of a high pressure spell. So, you know, again, you know, not quite as good as it could have been, because we do just miss out on the easterly. But, you know, certainly, you know, it could be worse. You know, we could be getting an Atlantic onslaught. But instead we've just got calm, frosty conditions into the 23rd as well. In fact, the upper air temperatures for the 23rd actually show that severe cold spell for parts of Eastern Europe. Whilst the UK is under mild air, but due to inversion it's actually quite cold at the surface. And really, as we go through the 24th and into the 25th of January, we actually build this area of high pressure through the country. And to be honest, this takes us through the rest of January now. So through the 26th, the 29th and into the 31st of January, that high pressure just sits there. And that takes us into February 2006 again. Was another very anticyclonic month. It has a central inland temperature of 3.7 degrees, which is slightly colder than average. And perhaps if you felt a bit let down from the winter so far, perhaps we're a bit more rewarded in this month. In fact, it's a little bit later on, but a bit more of a significant cold spell that was, sort of indicative of what the winter promised at the beginning to deliver does arrive later on in the month, excuse me. But for now, we just keep that very anticyclonic spell. So through the 1st and into the 3rd of February, again, that prolonged area of high pressure just stays around the country. Into the 5th as well, it just sits there. There's quite a lot of gloom in this early part of February, so actually quite a cloudy spell of weather this. But, you could say at least it's quite settled and we're not getting heavy rain and flooding. But, a very prolonged spell of high pressure there, through into the 7th as well, before by the 8th it does slowly start to collapse as we bring this deep area of low pressure through the country. But again, the wind's trying to go back into the north there, so again, threatening another cold spell through the 9th, but doesn't quite come off, because again, that high pressure builds back through the country into the 10th. Again, more very dominant anticyclonic conditions. Into the 11th and the 12th, and again, that high pressure trying to set up around Scandinavia. By now you're thinking it must be really getting close to delivering a significant easterly. But, that doesn't really happen at this stage. Through the 13th and into the 14th of February, the Atlantic does manage to flatten it off a little bit. Through into the 15th and the 16th, we do get quite a deep area of low pressure there. So quite an unsettled spell of weather actually, which is quite a contrast. And into the 19th, again, we just keep a bit of unsettled weather before the 20th. And finally, this is where we start to see something a little bit more promising. Because that area of high pressure that's in the mid-Atlantic does actually start to deliver a bit more of a northerly. And as we go through the 20th and into the 21st, you can see it's just starting to build further to the north. And as we go through the 22nd and into the 23rd, you can just see day by day it's slowly inching a little bit further north. So, just allowing to set up a bit more of a block around Greenland and Iceland. So, perhaps a bit of a hint that as we end off the winter and start to move into spring, something a little bit more interesting is going to happen. So, through into the 24th and the 25th of February, again that high pressure edges a little bit further north, and again the pressure's rising around Greenland, and the North Atlantic Oscillation is turning more and more negative as we get blocking to the north and low pressure running through to the south. And on the 25th there, you can see we're bringing an easterly through the country into the 26th, before by the 27th of February 2006, we open the door to a northerly wind. And in fact, on the 27th of February, and again there was another spell of heavy snow in the southeast. And again, this was probably one of the heaviest snowfalls of the winter, aside from that one in the end of November. So, the winter does go out with a bit of a flurry. So again, another interesting spell in this winter. So again, not showing that it was a fairly decent winter overall if you like cold weather. And that takes us into the 28th. Again, we have more snow showers swinging down the east coast. So again, a very decent end to the winter here. And actually, as we go into March, this actually sets us up for quite an interesting March as well. In fact, March 2006 was quite a cold month with a CET of 4.9 degrees. So that's quite chilly for March. And it was actually a very snowy month. Where I am in Manchester, there was actually quite a lot of snow in this month. It's probably the snowiest March that I have memory of. It was actually a lot snowier than, the more recent cold March that was 2013. And in terms of cold and snow, I would rate this one a lot more. But there we are on the 1st of March, and again we have another area of low pressure swinging down to the east of the country. So again, the meteorological spring, of course, opens with another cold and snowy day. So again, no signs of the spring. Into this, those are the upper air temperatures. Sorry, I keep forgetting that. And again, of course, we have cold air coming down from the north, and of course, you see the whole of the country is in the -5 Celsius isotherm, with some bitterly cold air of -10 degrees touching the northwest of Scotland. So, of course, again, that shows that the weather is certainly cold enough for snow. And actually, on the morning of the 2nd of March 2006, we recorded the lowest temperature of, the extended winter period of -16.4 Celsius at Altnahara. So again, another pretty decent early spring cold spell here. And there was some very heavy snow in my area on this day. I think there must have been a good 5 to 10 centimetres. So again, the winter, trying to exert its influence and show, pretty much what it could have been capable of doing if this had, happened more in January. Through the 3rd and into the 4th of March 2006, again, we keep snow showers coming through the country. In fact, on the 4th, we actually get a bit more snow for the south this time. So, again, the winter just refusing to let go. Through the 5th and into the 6th, before very briefly around the 9th, the Atlantic does try and have a go, but the cold air does fight back, because actually on the 11th and into the 12th of March, we actually get a very heavy snowfall in Scotland this time. In fact, parts of southern Scotland, so like Dumfries and Galloway, actually had about 20 to 30 centimetres of snow overnight 11th and into the 12th of March 2006. So again, another big cold, another decent snow event for this winter. Into the 13th, and again that high pressure trying to get up towards Scandinavia, but this time it does finally properly deliver, because as we go through the 14th and into the 15th of March, we get a proper easterly there from the central parts of Russia. So, bringing in bitterly cold air into the 16th, and those are the upper air temperatures there on the 16th of March 2006. Again, most of the country in the -5 Celsius isotherm, and some of the country in the -10. So again, we're bringing snow showers, in off the east coast. Again, through the 17th, that carries on, and into the 18th of March. So again, a very decent, a very good March this was, if you like cold and snow. On the 19th, again, we tried to threaten another northerly, before by the 20th and into the 21st, low pressure does start to come up from the south there. So the weather does slowly turn milder over the next couple of days. And through the 22nd and into the 23rd of March, we finally get another proper push of milder air, and that, pushes the cold air back, and then the winter finally ends just as we head into the last week of March. So through the 24th and into the 26th and the 29th of March, we bring some very wet but much milder weather. So that does explain the CET for this month. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this look back at the winter 2005-2006. As I said, quite a similar winter to what we've seen so far this year. But of course, as I always say, thanks for watching this historic video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy it. And again, if you have requests, do please let me know. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.